ends the world? Is it you? What if it is you? I don't think you're a cowboy at all, no. I think you're a killer. I think I know exactly who you are.
If Fallout Season 2, Episode 5 feels like the season's turning point, it's because it is. Not because of the explosions, not because of the action, but because of one quiet, terrifying realization hidden inside a conversation that most people watched once and moved on from. A line that doesn't just raise questions, it rewrites the entire shape of this story. Because Episode 5 doesn't just ask the oldest Fallout question again, it makes it worse. Who dropped the bombs? That question has haunted the Fallout universe for decades. It's the question that turns the wasteland into a crime scene. The question that turns every faction into a suspect. The question that makes every hero feel like they might be standing on someone else's lie. But in Episode 5, Fallout does something bold, something dangerous. It suggests that the answer isn't the one everyone's been arguing about, and the proof isn't hidden in a vault door, or buried in a terminal log, or whispered by some shadowy cult. The proof comes from Robert House himself, the man who's supposed to know everything. And what makes Episode 5 terrifying is that House doesn't sound confident. He sounds uncertain. He sounds like a man staring at a chessboard, realizing someone else has been moving pieces behind his back. So today, we're doing the deep dive Fallout fans can't stop asking for. We're going to break down exactly what Episode 5 reveals, what it implies, and why the show might be building toward the most unsettling version of the Great War we've ever seen. Cooper Howard goes to Vegas, not as a tourist, not as a gambler, but as a man moving toward the center of the storm. He's there because he believes he's found the devil, and in his mind, that devil has a name: Robert House. The myth, the legend, the man Fallout fans associate with control, with prediction, with the kind of cold intelligence that makes human emotions look like glitches in a system. And Episode 5 delivers exactly what the fandom has been waiting for, the House Cooper confrontation. But the scene doesn't play like a villain reveal, it plays like a warning. House doesn't talk like someone sitting comfortably on top of the truth. He talks like someone trying to buy time. Like someone trying to keep his hands clean while guiding Cooper exactly where he wants him. And then he says it. Not a confession, not an answer. A crack. A fracture in the story. House admits there's something he doesn't know. He says he believes there is another player at the table. And when Cooper asks who, House answers with two words that should not be coming out of his mouth. I don't know. That's when the entire Fallout universe shifts in your mind, because House is the guy who knows. House is the guy who plans for everything. House is the guy who should be ahead of every question. So if House doesn't know who started the war, what does that imply? It implies the event that destroyed the world didn't originate from the obvious suspects. It implies there's a shadow behind the shadow, a hand behind the hand. And Episode 5 is making sure we feel the weight of that. Now, let's talk about what this does to the Vault-Tec theory. For a while, Fallout's show has been peeling away at this slow burn suspicion that Vault-Tec didn't just profit from the apocalypse, it needed the apocalypse. In the Wasteland, Vault-Tec doesn't behave like a company that survived the end of the world. It behaves like a company that planned for it. It's always a few steps ahead. Its vaults aren't shelters, they're laboratories. And the deeper you go, the more it feels like the real experiment wasn't about saving humanity. It was about redesigning humanity. But Episode 5 comes in and says something that's almost worse than Vault-Tec being guilty. It hints that Vault-Tec might not have been the one who pressed the button. That's what makes House's another player line so devastating, because if Vault-Tec didn't start it, then Vault-Tec isn't the cause of the apocalypse. Vault-Tec is the beneficiary of someone else's decision, and that implies something horrifying. Vault-Tec might not be the ultimate villain. Vault-Tec might be the middleman, the corporation that didn't start the fire, but built an empire out of the smoke. That's why Episode 5 is so dangerous. It introduces an unknown player, and unknown players make every theory worse, because once you allow the possibility of a third party, everything opens up. China, the Enclave, a hidden alliance, a faction we haven't seen yet. Or something more disturbing, a system so large it doesn't even need a face. A machine of incentives where the apocalypse becomes inevitable because too many powerful entities benefit from it. And this is where episode 5 plays its next card, FEV, which stands for the Forced Evolutionary Virus. A phrase that Fallout fans know instantly, because it's one of the darkest pillars of the franchise. It's the reason super mutants exist. It's the reason the wasteland has monsters that aren't just radioactive accidents, but engineered outcomes. And episode 5 doesn't just name drop FEV for fun, it places it right in the center of the season's real story. FEV isn't just a new threat, it's a mission statement. It says, the future isn't about rebuilding civilization. The future is about modifying civilization, and once you connect that to the question of who dropped the bombs, you start to see the shape of the endgame. Because if the apocalypse was a reset, FEV is the rewrite. Bombs destroy the old world while the forced evolutionary virus creates the new one, and suddenly the Great War isn't just an event, it's the first step of a project. Now think about the psychology of episode 5. While House is hinting at unknown players, while FEV is sliding into the narrative like a blade, we're watching Lucy slowly collapse as a symbol. In earlier episodes, Lucy was a promise. She represented the idea that a good person could survive the wasteland without losing themselves. Episode 5 attacks that idea hard. Lucy isn't just struggling, she's changing. She's becoming the kind of person who makes compromises quickly, who makes violent decisions without time to process them, who begins to realize that morality in the wasteland isn't about doing what's right, it's about doing what keeps you alive. And that's the deeper connection, because the question, who dropped the bombs, isn't only about history, it's about the present. It's about whether humanity collapses because someone pushed a button, or because humanity was already broken enough that pushing the button became the logical next move. And episode 5 is showing you that collapse in miniature through Lucy. Her ideals are cracking, her self-image is splintering, and by the end of episode 5, the wasteland has done something terrible. It has made her competent, and competence in Fallout is never free. Now, let's talk about why House matters in a way most viewers don't fully feel yet. House isn't just a character, he's a symbol of control. In Fallout, House represents the fantasy that intelligence can outsmart chaos, that the world is a system, that prediction can beat randomness, that technology can protect you from the messiness of human nature. And episode 5 punctures that fantasy, because House admits he doesn't know who starts the war. He admits he can't see the full board, and that means one of two things. Either House is lying, manipulating Cooper with a performance of uncertainty, or House is telling the truth. And if he's telling the truth, then someone outplayed the smartest man in the room. That's why the audience is obsessed. Because if House can't see the real enemy, how can anyone else? Now the internet immediately jumped to theories. Some viewers believe this another player is the Enclave, the shadow government, the invisible hand, the faction that has always operated above the wasteland like a predator. And if the show is heading there, it would make sense, because the Enclave is the kind of faction that benefits from controlled collapse, the kind of faction that thrives when society resets and only the prepared survive. But there's another possibility that's even scarier. What if the player isn't a faction? What if it's a corporate alliance, a network of interests, a web of companies and agencies and executives who all profit from the same outcome? That's the most modern horror Fallout can offer, not a villain with a face, but a villain that looks like a boardroom. And episode 5 pushes that idea quietly, because it doesn't show you the button, it shows you the incentives, it shows you the relationships, it shows you the systems. And when you understand systems, you stop looking for the one person who did it. You start looking for the structure that made it happen. That's why this question will never die, because in Fallout, the war isn't just a war, it's a business model. Now, there's something else episode 5 does that's brilliant. It places Cooper Howard at the center of this mystery in a way that feels almost mythic. In the flashbacks, Cooper isn't just a guy losing his family. He's positioned as a man being pulled into the gravitational force of something much bigger than him. And episode 5 makes it feel like Cooper himself is becoming a piece on the board. Not because he's important politically, but because he is psychologically important. Because Cooper is the bridge. He's the character who remembers the old world. He remembers the lies before the bombs. He remembers the smiles that didn't mean anything. And he remembers the exact point where civilization stopped being real and started being a stage play. And that makes him dangerous to House, to Vault-Tec, to whatever this other player might be. Because if Cooper finds the truth, he doesn't just expose someone, he breaks the spell, he makes the apocalypse personal again, and that's what Power fears most. Now, here's where we push into the real theory. The reason episode 5 is built like this is because Fallout isn't trying to answer the question yet. It's trying to weaponize it. It's trying to turn who dropped the bombs into a hook that pulls you through the rest of the season. And the way it does that is by offering you 3 horror options. Option 1, Vault-Tec did it, which means the apocalypse was a product launch. Option 2, someone else did it, which means Vault-Tec isn't the villain, it's the collaborator. Option 3, no one did it alone, which means the apocalypse was the inevitable outcome of a world that made destruction profitable, and the reason option 3 is the most horrifying is because it's not a twist, it's a mirror. The forced evolutionary virus represents engineered evolution. It represents the idea that humanity doesn't deserve to survive as it is, that it needs improvement, control, intervention, and the show placing the FEV in the narrative now, at the exact moment it's reopening the Great War mystery, is not random. It's telling you the war and the virus are connected. The bombs reset the board. The FEV determines what pieces get to exist afterward. And if you think about it that way, then the Great War wasn't just destruction, it was selection, a filter, a test, and Vault-Tec, House, and this mysterious third player might all be competing for the same prize. Not money, not land, not power in the old world sense. The right to decide what humanity becomes next. That's the real war. Not the one that ended the world, but the one that begins after. And episode 5 is the first time the show lets you see that clearly. Now, the genius of Fallout is that it hides existential horror inside familiar genre clothing. It's cowboys and monsters and vault doors and neon Vegas. But underneath it, the story is about control, about how systems treat human beings as resources, about how survival becomes a kind of obedience. And episode 5 makes that theme impossible to ignore, because Lucy is being shaped. Cooper is being used. House is trying to steer events he can't fully predict. The FEV is moving into the story like a promise of manufactured future, and somewhere in the shadows, an unknown player is watching all of it unfold. So what does the show want you to believe right now? It wants you to suspect Vault-Tec because that's the obvious villain. It wants you to suspect House because he's too powerful to be innocent. But then it hits you with the line, another player at the table, and suddenly you realize the show isn't giving you the answer. It's giving you the feeling that the world ended because people like this exist. People who see apocalypse as opportunity, people who see extinction as leverage, people who can stare at the end of civilization and ask one question, who benefits? And once you ask that question, you can't unask it. Now, before we end this, we need to talk about what the rest of season 2 is likely building toward. Episode 5 is halfway through the season, and according to the showrunner, the series is intentionally peeling back layers about the bombs and corporate involvement as it drives toward its larger endgame. That means we are not getting the full answer yet. We are getting the setup. We are watching the pieces move into position, and the second half of the season will likely do 2 things. First, it will force Cooper to confront the truth about what happened to his world and his family. Second, it will reveal what Vault-Tec and the FEV were truly meant to accomplish, not just as experiments, but as the foundation of a new order. And if the other player exists, that player will emerge not as a surprise cameo, but as the final statement Fallout wants to make, that the world didn't end because someone made a mistake. It ended because too many people made the same choice at the same time. Now, here's the question I want you to sit with. What if the Great War wasn't started by fear, but by confidence? Confidence that the winners would survive. Confidence that the vaults would work. Confidence that the future could be engineered. confidence that humanity could be controlled like a product. That is the scariest version of Fallout's history, and episode 5 is pointing directly at it. So, who dropped the bombs? The honest answer is, Fallout isn't ready to tell you, but it is ready to tell you something else. That whoever did it wasn't alone. That the apocalypse wasn't a tragedy, it was a plan. And the reason that idea hits so hard is because in the wasteland, everyone is fighting to survive. But above the wasteland, someone is still fighting to decide what survival means. And if episode 5 is right, then the war never ended. It just changed shape. Because the bombs weren't the end of the story. They were the opening move, and we're only just now seeing who's really been playing the game. So tell me in the comments, who do you think the other player at the table really is? Do you think House is lying? Do you think Vault-Tec is still the main villain? Or do you think Fallout is building towards something even darker? A world where the apocalypse was simply the first phase of an experiment, and humanity was never meant to come out the other side unchanged. If you want the next deep dive, I'll do it. Because the moment Fallout starts explaining the past, it's never just telling you what happened, it's telling you what people are willing to do again.